Good to have you here. This is OmniView, episode 32 for April 13th, 2026. Balanced news perspectives. New week, fresh perspectives. Let's see what happened over the weekend and what's developing today. Rory McIlroy wins back-to-back Masters and thrilling Augusta finale as Trump announces Strait of Hormuz blockade sending oil above $100. Rory McIlroy successfully defended his Masters title at Augusta National. He held off challengers in an exciting final round to claim back-to-back green jackets exactly 364 days after his first victory. The win drew immediate praise from President Donald Trump, who called the golfer a legend on Truth Social and highlighted his resilience. This victory marks a significant achievement in professional golf. Different perspectives on this are worth noting. The Daily Mail celebrated the win as magnificent and emphasized the drama of the final day at Augusta, aligning with traditional sports journalism that values individual excellence and historic sporting moments. President Trump's public endorsement reflects a perspective that sees high-profile athletic success as worthy of national celebration regardless of international tensions. The reporting focuses on the human story of perseverance rather than linking the event to broader geopolitical news occurring on the same day. What is interesting here is how major sporting events can stand apart even amid serious international developments. The question worth considering is how rare back-to-back Masters wins are in golf history, and what this victory might mean for McIlroy's career legacy, especially as political figures choose to comment publicly on sports achievements during periods of tension. Shifting now to a rapidly developing story in the Middle East. Following the failure of weekend peace negotiations with Iran, the United States will begin blockading Iranian ports and the Strait of Hormuz at 10 meters Eastern Time on Monday. President Trump stated that Iran demanded a nuclear weapon during talks and that he does not care if they return to the negotiating table. Oil prices immediately spiked above $100 per barrel in response. Perspectives differ sharply on the implications. Mail Online reports emphasize Trump's view that Iran is desperate for nuclear weapons and criticize NATO for insufficient support, framing the blockade as necessary strength after diplomacy failed. The Guardian's live coverage notes Iran's warning that the blockade would violate a ceasefire, with Iranian officials stating they will not bow to threats, presenting the action as escalation in an already tense region. Bloomberg and BBC reports focus on the market reaction and potential deepening of a global energy crisis, highlighting economic consequences over political justifications. Both sides agree talks collapsed, but they differ on whether Iran's position or the United States' response represents the greater threat to stability. The strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz clearly looms large in all coverage. The question listeners should consider is how this blockade might affect global energy supplies and what role NATO plays according to the different statements, especially if neither side backs down. In Europe, a significant political change unfolded over the weekend. Hungarian voters chose pro-European Union candidate Péter Magyar and his TISA party, defeating long-serving Prime Minister Viktor Orbán in what appears to be a decisive shift. Orbán conceded defeat shortly after polls closed, describing the result as painful but unambiguous. The change is expected to affect Hungary's relationships with the European Union, the United States, and Russia. Coverage presents contrasting interpretations of what this means. The Guardian frames the election as ushering in a new era with promises to repair European Union ties, tackle corruption, and redirect funds to public services, emphasizing democratic renewal after 16 years of one leader. Deutsche Welle highlights the thaw in European Union ties and Europe's anticipation of whether Magyar can deliver on his promises. A Fidesz member of the European Parliament interviewed by France 24 attributes the loss to low turnout among undecided voters and broader European Union economic stagnation rather than policy failure, while criticizing the opposition's filthy and hate-filled campaign. The reporting agrees on the election outcome, but perspectives differ on whether this represents a rejection of Orbán's approach or external pressures on governing parties across Europe. Economic conditions and turnout questions appear central to the debate. The question worth asking is what factors likely contributed to the end of Orbán's long tenure and how Hungary's foreign policy might change under new leadership, given the challenges the new government will face in implementing reforms. On the tennis court, another notable result captured attention amid the day's other major sports stories. Jannik Sinner beat Carlos Alcaraz in straight sets with a score of 7-6 in the tiebreak and 6-3 to claim the Monte Carlo Masters title and reclaim the world #1 ranking in men's tennis. The match continued Sinner's strong run of form. The victory occurred on the same day as the golf triumph and the geopolitical announcements. Al Jazeera's reporting focuses on the athletic achievement and its significance for the Association of Tennis Professionals rankings. This coverage presents it as a straightforward sports success story without linking to external events, valuing competitive excellence and the drama of top players facing off at prestigious tournaments. The straight sets outcome against a top rival stands out. The question to consider is what reclaiming the #1 ranking means for Sinner's season, how significant a straight sets win over Alcaraz really is, and what this suggests about the current state of men's tennis, especially when compared to the golf achievements on the same day. Tragedy struck in Haiti at a popular historic site. At least 25 people died and dozens were injured in a stampede at a mountaintop fortress in northern Haiti known for attracting tourists. Authorities have reported on the casualty figures, but details about what triggered the stampede remain limited. NPR's coverage focuses on the human tragedy at a site popular with visitors. The reporting highlights safety concerns at major attractions in Haiti and emphasizes the immediate loss of life without extensive political context. Such incidents raise broader concerns about infrastructure and oversight. The question worth considering is what safety measures exist at major tourist sites in Haiti, how this incident might affect tourism in the region, and what factors could have contributed to the stampede, especially as these tragedies highlight ongoing challenges in the country. President Trump also faced criticism from an unexpected direction this weekend. He attacked Pope Leo, the first United States-born pope, after the pontiff made a peace appeal regarding United States and Israeli actions toward Iran. Leo has been an outspoken critic of the ongoing conflict. The criticism was described by some as terrible for foreign policy. Al Jazeera presents the exchange as notable, given Leo's American background and his willingness to criticize United States-Israeli policy. The coverage frames it within the broader Middle East crisis, suggesting tension between religious leadership and political figures on matters of war and peace, with different groups valuing either diplomatic restraint or strong responses to perceived threats. Public disagreements between presidents and popes are historically uncommon. The question to consider is what role religious leaders typically play in international conflicts, how unusual this public criticism is, and how the exchange might affect perceptions of United States foreign policy. The United States military took action against suspected drug trafficking. The military conducted strikes on 2 boats accused of drug smuggling in the Eastern Pacific, resulting in 5 deaths. The action is part of the Trump administration's campaign against alleged traffickers in Latin America, with details about the specific targets provided by the military. NPR reports the strikes as part of an ongoing effort to disrupt drug trafficking routes. This reflects a perspective that prioritizes security and law enforcement against transnational crime, with coverage focusing on the military's stated objectives rather than debating the broader policy approach. The effectiveness and risks of such operations remain subjects of debate. The question worth considering is how these military strikes fit into larger regional security efforts, what risks they carry, and how different countries approach drug interdiction. Markets reacted swiftly to the geopolitical developments. Oil prices surged above $100 per barrel, while stocks and bonds fell after President Trump's announcement of the Strait of Hormuz blockade. The Financial Times 100 is set to fall amid concerns over failed United States-Iran talks, with some analysts suggesting markets may be moving past peak fear despite the risks. Impacts reached specific companies, including a Japanese toilet maker that halted bathroom orders due to supply chain disruptions. Business coverage shows varied emphases. Bloomberg reports detail immediate market movements and corporate effects. CNBC observes that investors appear to have priced in much of the risk and are becoming less reactive to headlines. The BBC links the oil price rise directly to concerns about a deepening global energy crisis. Coverage reflects different focuses, from immediate volatility to longer-term market resilience, with business outlets examining economic mechanisms rather than purely political debates. The connection between geopolitics and economics is unmistakable. The question to consider is how geopolitical events typically affect energy markets, what it means for markets to price in risks, and which industries are most vulnerable to oil supply disruptions, especially if tensions are prolonged. In Australia, several political developments unfolded. 3 ministers in the state of Victoria have resigned. Separately, Barnaby Joyce commented that criminals need redemption following Pauline Hanson sacking a convicted rapist. The Guardian's live blog also noted government funding for a child abuse prevention helpline. The Guardian connects these stories within Australia's domestic political landscape. Coverage highlights issues of accountability, rehabilitation, and child protection with different political figures, emphasizing either strict consequences or opportunities for reform, reflecting ongoing debates about justice and governance. These events touch on fundamental questions of responsibility. The question worth considering is how political figures balance redemption with public safety, what role governments should play in child abuse prevention, and how these stories reflect broader Australian political dynamics. Now, to really understand much of the coverage around the current Iran situation, there is something most reporting leaves out. Maritime choke points like the Strait of Hormuz function as leverage points in a complex global energy system where control of transit creates asymmetric power regardless of who produces the oil. Roughly 20% of global seaborne petroleum trade passes through this narrow waterway between Iran and Oman. Tankers must follow established sea lanes while remaining within territorial waters at various points, creating legal and practical complexities for any blockade. Nations do not need to sink ships to create disruption. The mere credible threat of interference raises insurance rates, causes shipping companies to reroute, adding weeks in costs, and triggers precautionary buying that spikes prices. Historical parallels include the 1973 oil crisis when Arab producers used export embargoes rather than physical blockades, and the 1980s tanker war when both Iraq and Iran attacked commercial shipping. Today's situation combines elements of both physical blockade threats plus market psychology. Knowing this mechanism changes how you interpret coverage. When outlets report oil surging above $100, you can evaluate whether the price reflects actual supply loss or anticipatory behavior. When politicians declare a blockade, you can assess whether the goal is physical denial of oil or using the threat to force diplomatic concessions. The distinction matters because markets often react more to uncertainty than to actual disruption. Next time you see a headline about the Strait of Hormuz, ask who benefits from higher prices or from resolved uncertainty. What is the difference between physical blockade and market signaling, and what historical precedents exist for how these situations typically resolve? Before we go tomorrow, watch for further developments on the implementation of the Strait of Hormuz blockade and any responses from Iran or its allies that could influence energy markets. That's OmniView. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the OmniView summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. This podcast is curated by Patrick, but generated using AI voice synthesis of my voice using ElevenLabs. The primary reason to do this is I unfortunately don't have the time to be consistent with generating all the content and wanted to focus on creating consistent and regular episodes for all the themes that I enjoy, and I hope others do as well.
Without taking the dive, we went on vacation. We had a nice time. My doomsday